The clinking of wine glasses and soft instrumental music filled our dining room, painting the perfect picture of a successful family. I'm Anaya, and tonight, sitting at the head of the table, I felt a wave of pride for the life I'd built. My husband, Rowan, a respected cardiologist, was deep in a discussion about stock markets with his brother. Our 14-year-old daughter, Sia, the absolute light of our lives, was quietly pushing her pasta around her plate, lost in her own world. "We should book those Switzerland tickets next week," Rowan declared, his eyes catching mine with a warm smile. "The Sharmas said the skiing is magnificent this time of year." I smiled back, the corners of my eyes crinkling. "That sounds wonderful, Jan. This was us, the perfect couple, the perfect parents, the perfect family." Our social media feeds were a meticulously curated testament to our happiness, a gallery of smiles and exotic vacations. Everything was just as it should be. As I reached for the salt shaker, Sia's hand brushed against mine. It was a fleeting touch, almost unnoticeable, but I felt something pressed into my palm. It was a folded white napkin. I glanced at her, a question forming in my eyes, but she was staring intently at her plate again, her knuckles white where she gripped her fork. I assumed it was just a silly doodle, or maybe a secret request for extra dessert. Kids, you know? Discreetly, under the tablecloth, I unfolded the napkin. The words, scrawled in her familiar, loopy handwriting in blue ink, made my blood run cold. They hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. "He's not my real dad. Check the safe behind the Van Gogh print. Please don't say anything. I'm scared." Suddenly, the world tilted on its axis. The lively chatter and laughter around the table became a muffled, distant drone, as if I were underwater. My gaze snapped to Rowan, the man I'd been married to for 16 years. The man who had held my hand through every contraction during Sia's birth. The man who had patiently read her bedtime stories every single night, his voice a comforting rumble in the quiet of her room. Not her real dad? It was impossible. It had to be a cruel joke, a misunderstanding. My eyes then darted to the abstract Van Gogh print hanging in our living room. It was just a piece of art we'd picked up on a trip to Amsterdam years ago. A safe? I never knew there was a safe there. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird, frantic and desperate. The perfect, glossy picture of our life cracked right down the middle, revealing a terrifying darkness lurking just beneath the surface. Every laugh, every shared memory, every loving glance was now tainted with suspicion. I had to act normal. I forced a smile, my face feeling like a rigid, unfamiliar mask. "This pasta is delicious, isn't it, Sia?" My voice sounded strange, tinny, and distant, like it belonged to someone else. She finally looked up from her plate. Her big, brown-eyed eyes I had always believed she'd inherited from Rowan's mother were filled with a silent, desperate plea and a fear that no 14-year-old should ever possess. That look confirmed it. This wasn't a game. It was real. The rest of the dinner was a blur. I nodded and smiled, my mind racing a million miles a minute. Who was Sia's real father? Why had Rowan lied to me for all these years? And what was in that safe that he was so desperate to hide? The questions swirled in my head, each one more terrifying than the last. I felt like a stranger in my own home, at my own dinner table. I looked at Rowan, laughing at a joke his brother made, and a chill went down my spine. Who was this man I had shared my life with? After what felt like an eternity, our guests finally left. The house fell silent, the quiet amplifying the frantic beating of my heart. Rowan started clearing the table, humming a cheerful tune, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "That was a lovely evening," he said, stacking plates. I just nodded, unable to form words. Sia had already slipped away to her room, leaving me alone with the man who was now a stranger. I waited until I heard the shower running in our ensuite bathroom. Now was my chance. My hands were trembling as I walked into the living room, the Van Gogh print looking ominous in the dim light. It was a print of Starry Night Over the Rain, a painting I had always found calming. Tonight, it felt like a gateway to a nightmare. With my heart pounding in my ears, I reached out and carefully lifted the frame off the wall. And there it was, a small black, digital safe, flush mounted into the wall, perfectly concealed. I had dusted that wall 100 times and never noticed it. The deception was so thorough, so complete. My breath hitched. I had no idea what the combination could be. I tried our anniversary, Sia's birthday, Rowan's birthday. Nothing. Frustration and panic began to set in. What if I couldn't open it? What if Rowan came out and found me? I thought about Sia's note. She knew about this safe. Did she know the code? I couldn't risk asking her, not yet. I had to think. Rowan was a man of habit, a man of numbers. I thought back through our life together, searching for a sequence of numbers that would mean something only to him. Then, it hit me. The date of his medical school graduation, a day he always referred to as the day his real life began. I typed in the 6 digits, my fingers fumbling on the keypad. A soft click echoed in the silent room. It was open. I pulled the heavy metal door, my hands shaking so much I could barely grip it. Inside, there wasn't much. Just a stack of papers held together by a rubber band and a small, velvet pouch. I grabbed the papers first. My hands trembled as I read the top document. It was a birth certificate. Sia's birth certificate. My name was there, listed as the mother, but the space for the father's name was blank. Beneath it was another document, a legal agreement. My eyes scanned the legalese, my mind struggling to comprehend the words. It was a private adoption agreement, dated 2 weeks after Sia was born. It stated that I, Anaya, had willingly relinquished all parental rights to an unnamed male recipient. My signature was at the bottom, a near-perfect forgery of my own handwriting. I felt dizzy, like the floor was dropping out from under me. I sank to my knees, the papers fluttering from my grasp. An adoption? I had given birth to Sia. I remembered the pain, the joy, the moment they placed her in my arms. This document was a lie, a fabrication. But why? My trembling hand reached back into the safe and picked up the small velvet pouch. It was heavy for its size. I pulled the drawstring, and a single object fell into my palm. It was an old ornate key, the kind you'd see for a safety deposit box. Attached to it was a small tag with a name I didn't recognize. Vikram Singh. Who was Vikram Singh? And what did he have to do with my daughter? The pieces were scattered all around me, but they weren't forming a picture. They were forming a labyrinth, and I was trapped in the center. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. Rowan would be down any minute. I scrambled to put everything back, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and terror. I shoved the papers and the key into the safe, slammed the door shut, and fumbled to hang the painting back on the wall, praying it was straight. I hurried back to the dining room just as Rowan walked in, a towel wrapped around his waist, his hair damp. "Everything all right, Jan?" he asked, smiling his easy, charming smile. "You look a little pale." I forced another smile, the muscles in my face screaming in protest. "Just tired," I lied. "Long day." He came over and wrapped his arms around me, kissing the top of my head. His touch, which had always been a source of comfort, now felt like a cage. Every word out of his mouth, every gesture of affection, was now a lie. The game was on, and I had to play it perfectly. For Sia, for the truth. I had to uncover the identity of Vikram Singh and find out why Rowan had gone to such extreme lengths to create this elaborate deception. My perfect life wasn't just cracked. It was a pile of dust, and I had to sift through it, piece by painful piece, to find out who my husband really was, and what other secrets he was hiding in the shadows of our picture-perfect life. The search for the truth had begun, and I was terrified of what I might find. The rest of dinner was an absolute nightmare. I tried my best to act normal, laughing at jokes I could hear and nodding along to conversations that were just a blur of noise. My entire focus was on the crumpled note in my hand and the dark secret I now knew was hidden behind that stupid Van Gogh print on the wall. Every second felt like an hour. Finally, Rowan stood up, announcing he had to go to his home clinic for an emergency patient. The relief that washed over me was immediate. This was my chance. The second the front door clicked shut behind him, I spun around to face our daughter, Sia. Her eyes, which had been wide with fear all evening, now held a look of desperate determination. I pulled her away from the kitchen where the staff were cleaning up, guiding her into the quiet of the study. "How long?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "How long have you known?" Tears started streaming down her face. "A month," she choked out. "I was looking for the birthday money you hid for me. I found the safe behind the painting. It was open." She took a shaky breath. There were papers inside, and a photo. My blood ran cold. "A photo? What photo? What photo, Beta?" I asked, my heart pounding against my ribs. "It was a picture of you," she sobbed, her small body trembling. "Of you with another man. And there was a DNA test." Her voice cracked on the last words. "My name was on it. It said, probability of paternity, 0%. the world tilted on its axis. The room started to spin. A DNA test? Rowan had done a DNA test? He knew. For how long? How long had the man I shared a bed with, the man who acted like the perfect, doting father, been hiding this monumental secret from me? Why hadn't he said anything? Why hadn't he confronted me? A terrifying thought wormed its way into my mind. What was he planning? I had to know. I had to see it for myself. Ignoring the dizziness, I marched out of the study and into the living room, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control them. I walked straight to the wall and lifted the heavy, ornate frame of the Van Gogh print, and there it was. A sleek, gray, digital wall, safe, flush with the plaster. Sia was standing in the doorway, watching me. "The code is my birthday," she whispered, her voice filled with a pain that shattered my heart into a million pieces. He had used our daughter's birthday. Our daughter's birthday was the code to a safe holding the very secret that would obliterate her world. My fingers trembled as I punched in the numbers. 1008. The safe let out a soft click and the heavy door swung open. My eyes scanned the interior. There were no stacks of cash, no expensive jewelry, no family heirlooms. There was only one thing inside, a thick manila folder. My hand felt heavy as I reached in and pulled it out. On the very top was the photo Sia had mentioned. My breath caught in my throat. It was me, from 15 years ago, before I ever met Rowan. I was laughing, head thrown back, with air of my first love. The man I had loved so deeply, the man I had broken up with just weeks before my arranged marriage to Rowan. A wave of long-forgotten grief washed over me. Beneath the photo was the DNA report. I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the clinical text until they landed on the damning conclusion, printed in bold, probability of paternity, 0%. It was real. It was all real. But that wasn't all. Tucked underneath the DNA report was another, more recent set of documents. I carefully lifted the top page. My heart stopped. The title, printed in stark, legal font, was a draft for a divorce filing. The reason cited was marital fraud, and stapled to the back of the divorce petition was another document, a legal transfer of assets. My assets? He had drafted papers to transfer everything I owned, my inheritance, my investments, the business I had built from the ground up into his name. This wasn't just about him discovering the past. This was a calculated, cold-blooded plan for my future. A future where I would be left with absolutely nothing. No daughter, no money, no life. The man I had married, the father of my child, wasn't just hiding a secret. He was orchestrating my complete and utter destruction. And he had been doing it all with a smile on his face. The emergency patient, the clinic, it was all a lie. I suddenly knew, with chilling certainty, that he wasn't coming back tonight. He had set his plan in motion, and I had just walked right into his trap. Have you ever felt like you're living a perfect life, only to discover it's all a carefully constructed lie? That's where I was. I used to think I had it all, a loving husband, Rowan, a beautiful daughter, Sia, and a life that was the envy of everyone we knew. But one evening, that perfect world shattered into a million pieces. It started with a simple, innocent question from my daughter about genetics, a topic she was studying in school. That one question planted a seed of doubt that wouldn't go away. Driven by a sudden, gut-wrenching suspicion, I found myself in front of Rowan's favorite painting in his study. My hands trembled as I took it down. Behind it, as I always suspected but never dared to look, was a safe. I'd seen him open it 100 times, always so casual, so nonchalant. I never questioned it. But tonight was different. Tonight, I had to know. My heart pounded against my ribs as I tried the combination I'd seen him use our anniversary. The heavy door clicked open. Inside there was a single, thick folder. The label on it made my blood run cold. Anaya contingency. I opened it, and my world tilted on its axis. It wasn't just a secret. It was a premeditated destruction. Financial documents, manipulated investments, assets transferred out of my name into offshore accounts I'd never heard of. There were even medical records, subtly altered to suggest a history of mental instability. My husband, the man I loved, hadn't just been hiding something. He had been meticulously, methodically planning my complete and utter ruin. This wasn't a man preparing for a messy divorce. This was a predator setting a trap, ensuring I would have no escape, no resources, no credibility. The loving husband was a facade. The perfect family was a cage he'd built around me. Just as the weight of his betrayal threatened to crush me, I heard the front door open. Anaya, I'm back. Rowan's cheerful voice echoed through the house, a chilling counterpoint to the storm raging inside me. Panic surged through me, hot and sharp. With shaking hands, I shoved the folder back into the safe, slammed the door shut, and swung the heavy painting back into place. The click of the frame settling was deafening in the silence. I took a deep breath, schooling my features into a mask of calm, just as he walked into the room. You're back early, I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. He smiled, that perfect, practiced smile that I now saw for the lie it was. My last patient canceled, he said. His eyes, those brilliant green eyes I'd fallen in love with, flickered from my tense face to Sia's, who had been crying earlier. The air grew thick, heavy with unspoken accusations and the truth I now held like a weapon. Rowan, I began, my voice dangerously soft. I stepped closer to Sia, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Sia told me a fascinating story tonight. His smile tightened just a fraction at the edges. Oh, and what was that about? He asked, his tone still light, but I could see the flicker of caution in his eyes. He was a master of control, but even he couldn't hide everything. She was talking about genetics in school, I said, watching him, really watching him for the first time in years. About how children can look so different from their parents. It just got me thinking. Sia has her grandfather's eyes, doesn't she? Your father's eyes. A muscle in his jaw twitched. It was almost imperceptible, but I saw it. She does, he agreed, his voice a little too tight. But that's the strange thing, I continued, letting my voice drop to a deadly calm. Because your father had brown eyes. Everyone in your family has brown eyes. But yours are green. Dominant and recessive genes are just so interesting, aren't they? Almost as interesting as the secrets we choose to hide behind our favorite paintings. The color drained from his face. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. He knew that I knew. The predator had been seen by his prey, and the power dynamic shifted in an instant. Anaya, I can explain, he started, his voice losing its smooth composure, a hint of desperation creeping in. No, I cut him off, my voice cold, hard, and utterly unforgiving. You don't get to explain. You've had years to explain, but you didn't, did you? You were too busy planning my ruin. I held up my phone, the screen glowing in the dim light. I showed him the photos I had taken just minutes before, clear, undeniable images of every single document in that safe. Your little secret, I said, my voice dripping with scorn, is now my greatest weapon. I took a step forward, channeling every ounce of pain and betrayal into raw strength. If you think for 1 second that you can take everything from me, that you can discard me and our daughter like we're nothing, you have severely underestimated the mother of your child. I emphasized the last few words, looking pointedly at him, letting the implication hang in the air. Or should I say, the child you have raised as your own. The look of sheer, unadulterated panic on his face was more satisfying than any apology could ever be. It was the look of a man who had lost control, whose intricate web of lies had just been set ablaze. The perfect family, the beautiful lie, was gone forever. But in its place, something new and powerful had emerged. A fierce, protective truth. I held my daughter's hand tighter, her small fingers wrapping around mine. This was a battle I never asked for, a war I never wanted to fight. But now, standing in the ruins of my old life, I was more than ready. The game was over, and my war had just begun. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever faced a betrayal that turned your world upside down, know that you are not alone, and your strength is greater than you can imagine. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for the next chapter of this journey. Your support means the world to me.